Good morning, everyone. Can I ask you to take your seats? Thank you. Welcome to day 2 of the African Economic Conference 2019. And I hope you all enjoyed your dinner last night and the entertainment, and you're ready for another full day of interaction. Now, yesterday we heard from a lot of presenters who were setting the context. They gave us the data, they gave us the challenges, and the challenges, and the challenges, and some opportunities. But today, our focus is on solutions. So I'd like to welcome the discussion today on the panel who are going to talk about partnerships to close youth skills gaps and promote the acquisition of future-oriented skills. Now, this is an interesting panel because, as you saw, we had an event yesterday which we did not come to, where we hoped to showcase young entrepreneurs. They're going to be part of the panel today. So I'd like to invite the panelists to come up to the stage. I'll begin with Khalid Hassan and Sarah Abdul Rahman. And they are our young innovators. We call them the Promise. Please come up to the stage. And they have some very interesting innovations to talk about. They'll talk about their companies, Esmani and Helpy. The next group I'm going to invite to the stage are innovators who've been with us for some time, and they are going to be able to tell us what their experiences are and their lessons learned. I'd like to invite Mr. Regis Umugiraneza. He's the co-founder and chief executive of Carl Group Company from Rwanda. Please come to the stage. I'd also like to invite Mr. C.K. Japheth, who's a co-founder of the Innovative Village from Uganda. Please come to the stage. We also have one more panelist who I have not seen this morning who could be with us. Her name is Ms. Kolise, who's a founder of iMed Tech from South Africa. If you're here, please come to the stage. And we also have with us one of our very good partners who has supported us working with the young entrepreneurs from the Tony Alumelu Foundation. Deumi, please come to the stage. Thank you very much. And then finally, our moderator for this session, Dr. Raymond Gilpin with UNDP.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Angela, for that introduction, and welcome all of you. And as Angela said, I hope you had a very pleasant evening, and I think we were treated to some very warm hospitality from our hosts, and the cultural side of things was also quite good. And so, on behalf of all of us, thank you so much to the government and people of this great country for treating us so well. Yesterday we talked a lot about macro issues. What is entrepreneurship, role of the youth, etc. Today we want to start to drill down on some of the, I think, the applied side of things. What does this mean in practice? And what does it look like when we think about the Africa of the future? There are two main things we want to discuss today. First of all is closing the skills gap. And secondly, how we start thinking through the acquisition of skills for a future Africa. And I'm really glad that I'm not the one who has to do all of this. We have an excellent panel who are going to share with us their experiences, their thoughts, and we're looking forward to yours as well. Because when you think about it, the challenge of youth and entrepreneurship in Africa is not just a challenge of jobs and education. It's a challenge that requires us to think through an entire ecosystem of individuals, of institutions, of policies, of mechanisms of governance that combine to provide what some people call an enabling environment. On the way from the airport 2 days ago in the van, I overheard a very interesting conversation between two young economists. And one of the economists was asking the other, what does it mean to create an enabling environment? And that was a difficult conversation because we use a lot of these terms so often that we forget what they actually mean and how they apply. And so I hope today, as we think through a lot of the practical experiences, a lot of the wisdom and depth that we have on this panel, as economists, what does it mean for macroeconomic policy? Is there macroeconomic policy that is more conducive to entrepreneurship and jobs in an African context or not? Is it different for each country? And if that is the case, if that's what evidence and research tells us, then why do macroeconomic policies look so similar for all African countries? That means as economists, we're not doing our jobs. What about the micro frameworks? What about business theory? What about understanding what economics means in a setting where institutions are weak, the rule of law is almost non-existent in some cases, and we have the vast majority of the business sector being non-formal or quasi-non-formal? How do we grapple with those issues? Because if we think about it within the context of the Sustainable Development Goals 2030, by 2030, demographics will be completely different on the continent. Currently, more Africans live in the rural areas and the cities. By 2030, 2050, more Africans will be living in the cities. But then if you drill down and disaggregate that data, you would see that most of those in the cities will be living in slums. What about climate variability? What does the new landscape mean by 2030? Africa is changing. The world is changing as well. We now have growing multipolarity. What does that mean for economic relations between African countries and the rest of the world? Or African countries with each other? So my challenge for you today is, as we interact with the panel, let us also interrogate some of these core economic issues that should define the way we think about not just economic activity, but economic actors and economic policies in our respective countries. Entrepreneurship, as we said, is grounded not just on people doing business or coming up with smart tech ideas, but it's also predicated upon that ecosystem we talk about and partnerships. And so rather than having some of us who've never been entrepreneurs in our lives talk to you about it, I want to start by inviting our panel. And I'll start with you, Sarah. If you could give us a little bit of a glimpse into the world of the entrepreneur. What was the spark that led you to take this risk? And what's the journey been like? And as you cast your eye in your context over the horizon, what challenges would you face and what advice would you have for us? So if you could lead us off, Sarah.
Okay. Mainly, I'm a social entrepreneur. So what motivates me to start my own startup is a personal story. 5 years ago, my best friend had an accident. and she became a wheelchair user. Since then, Yumna faced a lot of problems doing her daily tasks alone, like going to school, to college, to anywhere alone. She always needs someone from her family to be with her in their daily activities. Actually, our journey started 1 year by a program held by UNDP Egypt and UNESCO called Youth Leadership Program. I met with my team, Anwar and Abdurrahman. Then we started thinking how we can help disabled to live a little bit normal in their daily life. So we create Helpy. Helpy is a simple mobile application that provides people with disabilities, mainly wheelchair users, with wheel-trained personal assistant, part-time personal assistant, to help them in their daily activities and to enhance their functional independence. Actually, Yumna's stories inspired me and my team to start this project. By the way, Yumna is now worldwide championship athlete in karate. That's what inspired us. And UNDP mainly helped us a lot in developing the project. But as entrepreneurs, we are mainly studying not only in finding financial resources, investment, and so on and so forth, but as a social entrepreneurs, we are studying finding investors because they all said that it's a social enterprise, it's a charity work, not profitable. But actually, social enterprise, it's profitable, it's not a charity work. The investors have to be aware of how social entrepreneurship can impact the society and can impact the world. As Helpy team and as a UNDP alumni, we are trying to be the impact we hope to see in our society. And that's all.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad you mentioned the fact that the profit element is not always foremost. It's important, but there are other benefits that you can get. But even though there's a social side, you can be profitable. Khaled, what's your journey been like?
Hello, everyone. I'm Khaled Aada. I'm electronics and communication engineer. Actually, the story began in 2015 when a friend of mine was doing a research on deaf people. He found out that there are people with dual disabilities. They are deaf and blind at the same time. This was shocking, and what was more shocking, that there are no technological solutions to help these people. So we decided to step up, because this is what entrepreneurship is about to step up and do something, not just being angry about a problem. You have to see the opportunities behind this problem. So we decided to take their unique way of communication, which is by pressing on special spots in their hands with different patterns. And actually, the only one who is able to communicate with deaf-blind people is their trainer, because he's the only one who knows the way. So we decided to make a smart glove that transfers this way into voices. So all what the deaf-blind has to do is pressing on this the special spots with different patterns as he's accustomed to do. After that, we ran through a very complicated process to come up with our first prototype. It was somehow pricey. After that, we decided to go into competitions, and unfortunately, we didn't run through. We didn't know what was the problem until we met UNDP, until we participated in UYLB program in UNDP. They taught us how to make a good business model, how to introduce our idea properly, how to be able to convince the investor into investing in our company. After that, we participated in the EcoSac forum, and actually in the YLB camp, we were able to come up with a new idea that is more handy and low cost. With a low cost, we came up with the idea we are going to use Internet of Things in a form of a bracelet with 4 buttons. This bracelet is connected to our phone application through the internet, so it's 24/7 connected to the phone application. He can reach his father at any time. We made it so he can use it in emergencies, if he's ill, if he's hungry, if he wants to go to the bath. Actually, he's deaf and blind, so he cannot tell anyone that he's ill. After the bracelet, all what he needs to do is to press on the button, and the message will be delivered in the same time, in the real-time operation, to his father, even if he is in another country, because using internet. Actually, after that, we participated in BUE incubator. We got a 60,000 grant, and now I am a mentor and UNDP alumni. We're helping youth to develop their ideas into a successful startups. Thank you.
Thank you very much to both of the entrepreneurs. I think one thing that struck me, Khaled, as you were speaking is, when we think about closing the skills gap, I'm not sure if we're all thinking about the same thing. But you mentioned 3 important skills in your journey, and Sarah, you also alluded to those. The first is the skills to bring your idea to fruition.
Yes.
The second are business skills. You talked about having to go for some training to get your business model right. And then the third are financial skills. And so it's really great that you've helped broaden our horizon. So we're not just thinking about skills in a very narrow sense, that there have to be vocational schools for people to go to, but there are many practical skills we need to imbibe if we're going to be successful. And one of the things that was going through my mind, I didn't understand half of the tech stuff that you were talking about. I'm not ashamed to admit it, but the important thing is connecting your training as an engineer to a specific need and coming up with something new, something cutting edge. And I think that's something we're going to have to be doing a lot more as we look at the future and what the challenges and the needs might be. And so I'll ask you all to join me in a round of applause for our 2 current entrepreneurs. We'll be coming back to you later on. But let me turn to some of the more seasoned entrepreneurs. You've heard some of the challenges, and let me start with you, CK. Talking about closing the skills gap, okay, and being able to ensure that we have the sort of partnerships that enable people like you to continue to succeed. Could you just share with us briefly some of the lessons that you have gleaned over the years, and if there are similarities with what we've heard or differences, if you could highlight those as well?
Thank you very much. I think I'm coming to the conversation, also reflecting on yesterday, especially about the skills gap. When I was interacting with some of the researchers out there, they asked me, what paper are you going to present? What study are you going to present? And it was really, coming from an entrepreneurship side, I saw the heart of where we're struggling as entrepreneurs in Africa. Because my day job, like I call it, is working 26 hours a day, 8 days a week with entrepreneurs like this, trying to understand how do we support them to realize the potential they have. And I use the word support sparingly, because when we begin from support, we're beginning at a weaker level. We make the youth and the young people look like they need to be saved, they need to be helped, they need to be, and yet in my country where I come from, 78% of the population is under 30. So if we don't learn how to unlock that potential, then I'm reminded of an African proverb that says, it takes a village to raise a child, but the part that's not said about that proverb is that if that child is not invited into the village, they will burn down the village just to feel the warmth. So looking at the skills gap, I think the bigger challenge from the experience we've been able to pick up is how we've approached entrepreneurship, skills, youth, and in a very isolated way. And yet an entrepreneur is not going to struggle because they didn't get the skills. If you give them the skills and they don't have the financing, then that will let them down. If you don't give them the financing and you give them the skill, it will let them down. How about access to market opportunities? How about help them building the entire team? So it's a combination of factors that must be put into play beyond just the skills. And how we look at it now is through ecosystem building and our own experience and interest in to understand how to better support entrepreneurs comes from looking at what the market has, which is multiple independent and connected activities that don't translate into value for entrepreneurs, but unfortunately don't even translate into value for implementing partners. So what that might look like is a one-off workshop where you build business skills. It might look like a conference, and then you hold every year the same conference and wait to meet for the next one next year. But more popularly across Africa, it has become a competition type economy where we send out a call, 100 plus submissions come in, not enough for any entrepreneur to do anything. So they get an award of $5,000, $3,000, $1,000. So of course not enough for them to do anything. They go on to buy an iPhone X, a laptop, and wait for the next competition. So we've become a competition type driven entrepreneur economy. When it took a step back, we realized that for us to support entrepreneurs, we must build the entire ecosystem and approach it from making sure all the pillars that an entrepreneur needs are in play. The skills is just one of those, and the capacity to understand that coming up with an idea doesn't make you, Bill Gates. There's a difference between a good idea and a good business idea. But very quickly, we had to realize that if you don't back that up with the capital, it becomes a challenge. And yet, 90% of entrepreneurs at early stage, 80% of the capital available is at growth stage. So we had to go around trying to build, an angel investment network and a seed fund to try to, help entrepreneurs at the seed stage. But speaking about, skills and also the future of skills, we took a particular interest in working with big business and the private sector, because if you look at, Europe, America, Asia, technology is up to with the trends. But if you look at the young African economy, it's this young generation that has that affinity to create, to come up with new ideas that can contribute to to big business. So the approach we adopted was working with private sector and big business to help them understand that, first of all, it's not corporate social responsibility, it's shared value, but leveraging the affinity of the young people to create and innovate, you can actually solve your biggest challenges that you have using technology. So we've seen success, whether it's solving challenges for refugees, challenges for banks, for insurance companies. And our promise to most of the big businesses, if you give us a challenge that you have, in under 10 days, using the skills the young people have developed, they're able to show you a prototype that you can adapt in your business. Yeah.
Thank you very much, CK. You've touched on a very important dimension of this, the importance to be able to understand how to monetize ideas. But I have a quick question for you before we move on to Regis. You talked about your work helping develop skills. How do you decide which skills to focus on? Since even just looking at this panel, you have engineers, you have software people, you have agribusiness, etc. How do you decide which skills? Because we're talking about closing the skills gap. And I think it was Khaled who helped us broaden our horizon. So what advice would you give in terms of focusing on the skills?
I think that's a really nice question because what we have, and I liked what the Minister of Education shared yesterday, what we have across most economies is, skills for skill's sake. You go through school and hope to get a job. But our approach has been looking at what are the skills of the future. There is the research by IFC that says Sub-Saharan Africa needs to create 1.5 million jobs per month if we're going to, if we're going to meet the demand for jobs. But what we're seeing is it's not skills for jobs, but it's skills for a young person to be able to apply the potential that they have. So we've tapped into aspiration of young people in terms of where do you see the gap between the world's deep needs and your own passion to contribute to solve such gaps. And that has been the starting point. And that's what we've channeled into mostly industry challenges and help them develop the skills they need to be able to solve those challenges. And as they solve the challenges, we spin off that process into an independent startup that we're now able to invest in and give a life of its own. It goes on to employ other young people. So the basic approach has been from beginning, from the level of aspiration and confidence, however innocent it is from a young person, and then begin to grow that and nurture that into contributing to gaps of value within the marketplace.
Thank you very much. I think that's an assignment for some of our budding labor economists. It would be great to see some research into disaggregating, analyzing Africa's evolving labor markets, both formal and non-formal, within the context of entrepreneurship. Let's move on. Regis, could you tell us a little bit about your journey and what lessons you have learned and the number of ideas you have brought to market?
Thank you very much. I'm Regis Mugiraneza. I'm coming from Rwanda. I run a company called the Kari Group. It's a youth-ready company. We do pastries out of sweet potatoes. As you said, actually, when you come up with this topic, I remember when I was starting, I started from scratch, from zero. In 2014, I was only 1 month after my graduation. But we started as 4 young people. All of us were graduated. We didn't have anything. When it comes to the skills, it was a big problem. We wanted to produce a product. And we faced 4 big challenges. One was technical skills to make a product, because we wanted to produce a product. The second was we didn't have the business management skills. When you are starting business, you must know at least how to do business plan or how to develop your market, how, those stuffs about business, even how you hire people. We didn't have those kind of skills. The third one was having infrastructure. When you are producing a product, you must have a space. We were graduating from university. We didn't access to land. We didn't have any building. We didn't have money to rent, And last but not least was about access to finance, to have at least the capital. But we said when we were starting, because opening a company in Rwanda, it's a free of charge. You just go to the institution in charge of that and you register a company. Within 6 hours, you get registration certificate. We said, let's start with selling idea. So I cannot say by accident, but there was a call from Ministry of Youth and in partnership with the UNDP. They have what we call the Youth Connect. It's a platform. Now it's become a Pan-African platform but it started in Rwanda in 2012. So we applied that platform. So we compete from from district sector level up to national level, and finally we won the prize of around 3,000 USD. So I can say that was a seed planted in us from UNDP and Ministry of Youth through Youth Connect. So at that time, that's where at least we started making product. Of course, we started with making donuts from sweet potatoes. We failed a lot because we didn't have the skills to make a product. But later on, we tried to figure out how we can get access through partnerships. We went through different organizations that are empowering youth. So we worked with the Ministry of Youth to hire some people to train us how to make a product. And that seed we got from the Youth Connect also made us to be ready for other investment. That's where we applied for the Business Development Fund, which is a public bank there to support youth and women entrepreneurs to access to collateral. So we applied, and then because we had different products, at least they came and they saw the product, they saw how we were motivated, and they believed in us. So they gave some money to buy the machines. Now our company, when you value it, can cost more than 200,000 USD. From zero in 2014, we have more than 20 people in our company. And we're still increasing, we're still growing, we want to invest more, and we are attracting more investment. I can say that when it comes to partnership to fill the gap of skills, we can starting with technical skills and business skills. Those are the key skills needed for young people to make them successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Regis. Yeah, please feel free to applaud. Thank you very much. I think you echoed a lot of what CK mentioned, the fact that in the ecosystem, you can't pick and choose. You can't say, I'm just going to do credit, I'm just going to do finance, I'm just going to do skills. There's a complementarity among all those factors, and you have to think about it as an ecosystem. My question for you, Regis, is you talked about technical skills, business management skills. Looking into the future, are there different skills you see we're going to need, and or is it the same set of skills? And how could we bridge the gap? Briefly.
Thank you. Actually, as the business grows, all the time you need new skills. That's why I always learn new things every day. We used to say knowledge is a power. So I used to be, when people ask me, actually on my CV they wrote that I'm a CEO. I'm not really CEO. I'm just a director. Why? Because I want to be CEO while I'm having 100 people in my factory. At least to coordinate 100 people. So when you are going to coordinate 100 people, you need some other further skills. So I can say that, of course, in the future, I will need further skills. But when it comes to business, of course, it's about business skills, business management skills. How do you hire people? Human resource management. So those kind of skills, it's really needed for the future. But also, having also the technical skills. Because as a business owner, it's not sufficient to say, now I'm a businessman, I'm done. You have to know if the product that your employees made is the right product. So to know that, you have to have the skills to make it at yourself, not only looking at your employees. You have also to know at yourself how to make the product. So those two things, I think, of course, I will need in the future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We've been talking a lot about partnerships. The Tony Elumelu Foundation has been a partner with UNDP and with a number of other organizations who supported entrepreneurship. Naomi, we are really pleased to have you here. Could you tell us a little bit about the work you do and maybe also cast your eye a few years ahead and see, is it likely to change? What would young entrepreneurs in Africa need?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. I'd first like to thank the organizers, the AFDB, UNECA, UNDP, for putting together this. I missed day one, which was all the academic stuff, and I wish I'd made it so we can have some the scholarly part of this conversation, because I'm coming from the angle of we do the work on ground. So it's always good to kind of have the academic side to kind of back up what we are seeing on ground. When we discuss jobs, entrepreneurship, and capacity development for African youth, it's always interesting to have to explain to people why are we even talking about it. And some data was already put out there, and I know this room is filled with economists who can back up the data that Africa currently has close to 200 million youth, either unemployed or underemployed. And the forecasts say by 2025, there will be an additional 150 million youth entering the workforce. And when we travel within, my organization is a Pan-African one, and just traveling around to the different countries, you will always hear, there are no jobs, we can't find jobs. And my response is always, if you can't find a job, or if there are no jobs, why don't you create one? Create two, create three, create four, create as many as necessary, maybe 100, so that the story that you're telling about not finding jobs, it ends in this decade, in fact. It ends with us, because the youth need that hope. We need to figure out how we're going to create activity, sustained economic activity on the continent that would yield the social development we're looking for. This activity will help keep our youth from illicit activity, from irregular migration, risking their lives and freedom to look for opportunities where Africa itself is the final frontier. I was on a panel in Paris about a month ago, and everyone on the panel is like, we're going to Africa, that's where the opportunities are. And I realize that we have the youth on our continent who don't see these opportunities, who don't understand how wide and vast the opportunities are. That's why the work we do at the Tony Elumelu Foundation is so, so important. In 2015, the founder, Mr. Elumelu, committed $100 million of his own personal family wealth because he believes in a concept called Afrocapitalism. And that says that the private sector in Africa will create the solutions to African problems. And by committing that money to identify, mentor, train, and provide seed capital for 10,000 entrepreneurs across 10 years. So from his own personal wealth, he was willing to commit to do the training, the mentorship, and the seed funding for 1,000 people a year. We are 5 years into the program, and I can say that by the end of this year, we would have hit almost 10,000 people, way ahead of the timeline that we'd set up. And how did we do that? We did that with partnerships. Aside from the personal contribution of the founder, the biggest partners we have in the program, which I'll talk a little bit more about, is the African Development Bank and the UNDP. Jointly, by the end of this year, they would have sponsored additional 4,000 entrepreneurs onto the program. And I think we should applaud that. Because for me, we have these convenings where we're talking the talk, but there are organizations that are walking the walk. They're putting their money behind the theories and the ideas. What we found in running the program is that training, mentorship, and funding. However little, which is the seed capital of 5,000 USD, they are all the same, they're different sides of the same coin. You can't train and just train and dump. You need to train, have someone or an experienced business person, an innovator, a disruptor who's ready to help, because we play at the base of the pyramid. There's this conception that all the entrepreneurs in Africa are unicorns that are going, no, there's some entrepreneurs who are running a pepper grinding business in the far out corner of Niger. They're not the ones that you're going to give $100,000 and send them to Silicon Valley. But we need to support these entrepreneurs, because when they're economically engaged in that environment, the environment benefits from it. So when we discuss youth livelihoods and jobs creation, we have to look at entrepreneurship as the key. The foundation believes wholeheartedly that if we can teach the skills that we teach entrepreneurship, if we can teach the idea that you're responsible for the creation of your jobs, because it's also it's a mindset shift that we have to work with. We need to shift the mindset from Africans and a continent of charity recipients, or to a continent that, yes, you will support. And I honestly believe the word support is the right support. It's the right word, rather. The word empowerment is the right. We support people, we empower people to make the best decisions for themselves and their communities. We come through every year. We receive applications into the program. The last year we had almost 300,000 applications. He laughs because he's an alumni of the program, and I believe he said 2016 in our second year. So that seed capital he got, the $3,000 from Youth Connect, he was able to pipeline that into an additional fund. Small money, but at least look at the story he can tell today. Look at the future he's building to be able to employ 100 more people from that $5,000. So for us, when we discuss entrepreneurship, we've identified it as the key to sustained economic growth and social development on this continent. Entrepreneurship has no restrictions. We make it possible for youth entrepreneurs, whom, as of now, over 40% are women within our program. Then countries are spread across all 54 areas. There are no restrictions to age, to gender, to religion. If you are ready to work to build a different future for yourself, we're looking to work with you. And we do that simply with innovative partnerships. Like I mentioned, the AFDB, the UNDP, GIZ, some private organizations. We're working across the board with all the organizations who believe in entrepreneurship as a skill set that you can learn. You don't have to start one business and stay in it. You can pivot to 10 million businesses. But the learning that you have as an entrepreneur, it stays with you through every business. It keeps you productive through every business as you pivot. So for us, aside from the commitment that the founder of the foundation made, when we work with development organizations, we generate a sort of hope on the continent. And it seems maybe abstract to tell this room, but when you go to the countries during visits or application drives, and you have people come up to you and they're like, that seed capital changed everything for me and my family. We fund businesses at idea stage. You know, there's a sort of, maybe some of the academics in the room can study this, but there's something called the selection effect. And I genuinely believe at this point, just being selected, your idea is selected to be funded, it changes, it adds a sort of mindset to the businesses that when we start talking about empowering entrepreneurs, when we start talking about job skills, and all these things come after you're already excited to work, to do something exciting for yourself, to engage and to stay engaged on the continent. Where we are now, we're working on enhancing the skill sets. And one of the things I noticed that we need to also discuss is, while we're pushing for entrepreneurship as a way to break all the barriers. We sometimes assume, again, that the whole of Africa, we're ready for the type of job skills for the future. We have entrepreneurs that I've met across the board who the key to their involvement in the next world order is digitization. We cannot assume everyone has the same minimal level of skill to access the opportunities. So while we're talking about, for us, we talk about entrepreneurship, but we also have to pay attention to how are we preparing the youth to be able to access the opportunities in the future, which will be very, very, you need to be at least minimally tech savvy or tech enabled. You need to be able to take advantage of the internet and digital tools for self-empowerment. Once we can tackle that, in addition to the entrepreneurial training and the business development services that organizations like myself offer, and the seed capital that comes from support from development organizations, we now have a well-rounded way to say we're moving the opportunity forward. Just to wrap it up, I always say the work we do at the foundation is something where we've had to be creative about not reinventing the wheel. What do I mean by that? I feel like when we have these convenings, we need to come out of these convenings with a singular, or maybe not singular, but a general idea of how we want to move forward in the discussion. How are we creating these decent jobs and these economic opportunities for the African youth? And I genuinely believe strong partnerships among all the stakeholders is the way forward. Development practitioners, policymakers, the youth themselves, scholars, the academics, private sector representatives, and non-governmental organizations, everyone who has a stake in the development of Africa, we need to work together. So we think about it that if your interest is in research, in analysis, and in analyzing or assessing the impact of entrepreneurship interventions in Africa, talk to us at the foundation. We have data for days. That could be your contribution to this movement. If your interest is in the creative space and capturing these and sharing the stories of impact that we have, talk to us. We have entrepreneurs for days. If your interest is to deploy or to scale an entrepreneurship intervention in your region or in your area, talk to us. We're working with development organizations and governments to deploy these interventions in their areas. And for the UNDP and the AFDB and organizations as such, let's continue working together, because the stories we're getting out of it, the results we're seeing, the impact that we see, it's absolutely changing lives. You know, there's a lot we can do to create hope and opportunity on the continent. And I believe, and I know everyone at the foundation stands with me on this, that Africa is the final frontier. And in order to see the Africa that we want to see, the new face of Africa, we really need to work together so that we can position Africa as the giant that it really has the potential to be. And that lies squarely with each one of us playing our role within this framework of entrepreneurship, job creation. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We have about half an hour for questions, and I'd also add to that comments, because I'd like to hear from you as economists. What ideas is this engendering in terms of work on labor market dynamics, macro and micro policy frameworks, business theory, and we'd really want to be able to curate some of those. So the next time we meet, it will be great to have a few papers on that. What are we learning and what's the evidence telling us? Or you might have questions for our panelists or something to share. So the floor is now open for your questions. Please make them as concise as possible, so we'll get as many questions in as we can. So if you have a question, please indicate by raising your hand, and we'll have a microphone to you. We'll start with the lady in front. Please introduce yourself before you ask your questions, please.
Hello, my name is Salimata Masali, and I'm from Senegal. I'm currently implementing a project organizing the supply chain. My first question will be for Mr. Regis. He did ask you a question about skills that you should get. And from what I heard, you're doing donuts with sweet potato. I think with a growing middle class and increasing health concerns, it's worthwhile start looking into other types of product development that will answer to those problems. As people start thinking about now obesity, diabetes, and all those kind of things that are linked with sweet products, fried products, that would be for you. And then for Sarah and Khalid, I saw that they were able to spot a gap and see opportunity and start. Now, with Mr. CK, you are mentoring youth that are seeking to be entrepreneurs, but they are self-identifying. And my problem is, why are we waiting for people to self-identify, then we create solutions for them? We need to start thinking, how do we plant that seed of entrepreneurship from primary school and up, instead of waiting for people to hit the wall and we're like, hey, why don't you become an entrepreneur? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The gentleman in the back.
Thank you very much. My name is Emmanuel Rukundo. I'm a consultant for investment and financing. And my question goes to all the entrepreneurs on the panel. What did you learn about the ecosystems you are working in? Because I guess Rwanda is different to Uganda, different to Egypt. And being an entrepreneur, you come up also with the findings on the ecosystem in which you are working. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll take two more. The lady here and the gentleman here. The lady in white, right there.
Hello, I'm Jerusalem Ibaltal from Ethiopia. I'm a lecturer in one of the first generation universities in Ethiopia. That's Bahar Dar University, and I'm offering courses for the master's students in international and comparative education. I'm also coordinating the external funds and external projects in my university. So my question goes to Hassan. So you were discussing about the skills gaps and skills mismatch. So my question, just let me put in this way. How could you advise the higher education institutions to equip their graduates with the soft skills, or for both soft and hard skills required by the current labor market? And can you mention at least some major skills required by the labor market, more specifically for engineering graduates, because you were focusing for the engineers. So I had research in this area about the skills gaps and skills mismatch. So I saw engineers, graduate engineers who were working for bricklayers in my country. You know, you see the skills mismatch. And for the hotel receptionists, they are civil engineers, they were electrical engineers, but they were working like hotel receptionists, bricklayers, and some minor jobs. So how can we close this skills gap, and how can you advise the higher education institutions to improve or to equip graduates with the required skills? Thank you so much.
Thank you. The last one for this round will be the gentleman here, and then we'll have a second round.
Good morning. Bon, j'aimerais parler en français. Je m'appelle Sani Lola Adouchafi.
Attends un peu, s'il vous plaît.
All right.
Everybody ready?
OK. Je suis Sani Lola Adouchafi. Je viens du Niger, promoteur de l'entreprise Ypren Energy et cofondateur de l'Organisation of Young African Leaders for Development.
It's not working.
Excusez-moi.
Yeah, I'm waiting for her because my question goes to her. OK. Voilà. Et je suis alumni Tony and Emily Foundation 2019.
Is it not working?
It's still in French.
We need to change the channel.
Thank you. This is working.
OK. C'est bon. J'ai dit, all right. J'ai dit, je suis alumni Tony and Emily Foundation 2019. Et d'après ce que j'ai compris de votre intervention, vous accompagnez, vous coachez, vous formez les jeunes avant de bénéficier du CID. Yeah. So, après, on les donne le CID. Madame, la question, c'est de savoir, après avoir bénéficié de ce CID, quelle est la suite? Parce que si on prend le cas du Niger, au moins chaque année, il y a 2000 startups qui se créent. Dans ces 2000 startups, à peine le 200 arrive à finir l'année. Et dans ces 2 ans, la deuxième année, à peine on arrive à avoir 50%. Donc, imaginez si, par exemple, dans le cas du programme Tony et les milieux, dans les 2000, on les donne les $5 000, c'est beaucoup d'argent. Et après avoir les formés, maintenant, si on les laisse, je pense que c'est quelque part un gâchis. Il faut avoir un mécanisme pour le suivi même après le CID. Donc maintenant, ma question, je répète ma question, c'est de savoir quel est le mécanisme suivant après avoir bénéficié de ce CID.
Merci.
Merci.
Merci. All right, we'll go to the panel. We'll come back for a second round. I see a couple of hands, but just to allow the panel to respond. I think there was a broad question about what have each one of you learned about the ecosystem in your country, the policies, institutions, the programs, etc. And then there were a few specific questions that were directed. If I could appeal for brevity, we could have bilateral conversations after, but just give us a really short version of the questions. Let's start with you, Khalid, and move up the...
Okay, about the ecosystem question. Actually, the ecosystem in Egypt is trying so hard to push the entrepreneurs forward, but the main thing in the ecosystem in Egypt, they're like separate islands, you know. Everyone is trying to work hard to come up, to push the entrepreneurs forward, and this one is trying to push the entrepreneurs forward, but they aren't integrating their job. Actually, I think they're doing a great job, but they need to integrate their work more to benefit more the small startups and make them go forward faster.
Okay, first of all, it's not my first startup. I'm running 2 startups. The ecosystem in Egypt, it's a little bit mature, but as Khalid told us, that there is a lot of incubators and accelerators and institutions and help the entrepreneurs, but it's not totally integrated in one place. We have almost 7 or 6 accelerators, big accelerators, but they all target all kind of entrepreneurship. It's not specific in a specific field, but it's not totally integrated. So as entrepreneurs, we need the ecosystem to be integrated for easier experience for us.
Thank you for the questions. Just speaking about the ecosystem and looking at it across Africa too, I think last year Africa hit $1 billion for entrepreneurs, startups, people who are trying to solve different challenges. But we see that most of this is concentrated in South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya. It's also because of, I like to say, geopolitical circumstances, but then for other countries, these ecosystems are either beginning to emerge or are not connected or existing at all. So you find that an emerging ecosystem for me is like a 3-year-old baby, and it cannot support entrepreneurs. So the question now goes to whose responsibility is it to do the thankless job of building the ecosystem? And our belief is if it's not built, then we can't support our entrepreneurs to start, grow, expand. But I want to take particular interest in the question around self-identifying of entrepreneurs. I speak to anywhere between 5 to 10 entrepreneurs every single day, and it's beyond the scales. And every single entrepreneur who walks into my office thinks that they're God's gift to the world, and what they're building is going to take away a big business like MTN or Stanbic Bank off the surface of the world, and you should be listening to them. It's a natural, self-exaggerated opinion about what they're doing. That's what entrepreneurship comes with. But there's a concept about the trough of sorrow, what an entrepreneur really has to go through if they're going to successfully build a business. It starts as a normal person on the street, and then you're hit with an idea of a startup, then you think you're the best thing that has ever happened to the world, and then just before you think things can't get any worse, you begin asking yourself difficult questions about the business you're building. And no one needs to tell you it's not going to work, but you have this conversation by yourself. Then it hits rock bottom, and then it starts to eventually work. So facts keep changing across that journey. Now, our research shows that period is anywhere between 4 to 10 years. But we've discovered that by putting in place the initiatives or the resources that an entrepreneur needs during that journey, during the trough of sorrow, helps them actually come out on the other side, better. A quick example is a young girl called Daisy back at our space. She initially came up with partners, and they had a business they called Gone Rogue. So I used to ask her, how am I going to introduce you to partners? That these are the people from Gone Rogue. 6 months into the journey, the two broke up. They went separate ways, and each of them now is building an independent entity, employing fellow young people. So there's power in self-identification and the process. Unfortunately, for entrepreneurship, I can't take the elevator to making it easier than it really is.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Let me start with an ecosystem. When it comes to ecosystem in Rwanda, I could say that Rwanda is doing an amazing job. When you look at how the government is committed to support startups, it's really amazing. I can start with an example of the Youth Connect. Now they are selecting 150 every year startups just from rural area, sector level to national level. And everyone who was selected are getting at least minimum $500. And when it comes to the policy, they designed a youth policy, and also when they design the youth policy, they do also put some entrepreneurship policy in it to support young entrepreneurs. We have so many incubation centers. Some of them are now being developed, like when it comes to food and agribusiness. Like next year, they will launch the food hub where young entrepreneurs or startups, those who have an idea, will have access to some equipment to try and to make some trials. In IT, we have K-Lab. It's an IT-based incubation center where young people who have an idea in IT go there and find expert and make the prototype. And also we have also Fab Lab. It's a fabrication lab, 3D printing. So we have so many initiatives that is set up by the government to support startups, and they are still having so many things to do. We have in Rwanda National Strategy for Transformation for 7 years. The government committed to produce at least 1,500,000 jobs within those 5 years. So every year they should create at least 200,000 jobs. So to create that, of course, they have to create also an ecosystem, a good ecosystem. So within partnership with the private sector, but also development partners like UNDP. When it comes to the question I asked from a sister from Senegal, am I right? Yeah, actually, when I was at university, that's where I started thinking about how I can do my business. I started working on my dissertation. My topic was about sweet potatoes when I was at university. So I realized that we had 3 challenges in my country. One, sweet potato was considered as useless crop in Rwanda, where you have 9 out of 10 households, they grow sweet potatoes. So when it comes to the harvesting time, there was a huge losses because people doesn't want to eat a sweet potato in a normal way. The second challenge was we have a problem of malnutrition issue. And around 35% of children are having the malnutrition issue. So, and sweet potatoes we are talking about, it has nutrition that can fight those nutrition problems. So I say, how can link those gaps? There is a production, post-harvest losses. There is a problem of malnutrition. How can I link it with those problems? I say, let me start thinking how I can produce other food from that sweet potatoes, and then those children can benefit those nutrition content from the sweet potatoes. That's how we started thinking. So our aim was about producing nutritious food from our local produce using sweet potatoes. So we started it from donuts, and now we are producing very delicious bread. You talked about the diabetics. We don't use any sugar because sweet potato has its own sugar. So we don't use any sugar to add in the bread. By January, we launched a biscuit. We want to even export our product to local market, also African market. And there's other product we're launching in June called the Chin Chin. It's a famous food in West Africa. Nigeria, I think, is the best in Chin Chin. So we want to make a gluten-free Chin Chin by using sweet potato and cassava. So we are still thinking about new product, but also looking at the market needs. So I think we will having more product, but we started small, and then we grow as according to the market growing also. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Leomi.
Okay. I actually remember we met in Niamey, didn't we? Yes. Hi, how are you? Thank you for your question. I think you're right. There really ought to be a full, well-rounded approach to any intervention. However, you have to look at it like a whole value chain. if there's an organization, and essentially because what I preach is partnerships to achieve or to tap into the entire value chain. If there's an organization who starts with the training, who do the mentoring, who do the initial seed capital, and then we've set up TEF Connect, which allows you to connect with your mentors, technical assistant, business development services. It really is up to the entrepreneur to push for what they want. We're at a stage where our alumni network is robust with partnerships with the French Development Agency, AFD, who's come up with a risk guarantee for entrepreneurs who are ready to scale. We have partnerships with legal teams across Africa, or even just professional services like Deloitte, who are ready to help in terms of business development services across all the countries in Africa. So if an entrepreneur comes to our program, gets stuck at any point, we have the services ready for you to reach out and say, I am stuck here, how can we help? We have a very responsive alumni network. So for us, as we grow and scale, it really kind of weans out those, let me say, who are not driven. He mentioned something amazing, that all entrepreneurs think they're the ones that are going to change the story. They're the ones that are going to bring the billion-dollar business. They're all unicorns. And it's by their desire to access these add-on services that we're able to really be able to know who's ready and who's not. But for the Tony Elumelu Foundation, like I said, once you log on to TF Connect, or you can shoot us an email, you have the email address, you have access to the variety of partnerships that we've lined up across the value chain for entrepreneurs. So if it's skill development that you want, a specific technical skills, we have people who are teaching photography skills. We have people, and these are people who we have come in partnership with to be available for our entrepreneurs. If what you need is to scale, but you need to talk to a lawyer about it, we have country-specific support for our entrepreneurs. And we're always, and he spoke about Youth Connect in UNDP, we're always excited to work with other programs who we can pipeline into our program. Because the madam from Senegal said it, entrepreneurship is something that we need to start thinking about before you hit the wall, you've graduated and there are no jobs. So if we as a foundation can offer these variety of services, and then we work with other people who are offering complementary services, there's not one point that an entrepreneur will be left behind when we all work together.
Thank you very much. I've been reminded twice that we should be rounding up. We did start half an hour late, and this is a very important topic. As you can see, there's a lot of meat and things that we would like to discuss. So let me apologize to those who wanted to ask questions or contribute, but unfortunately could not. We started off by thinking about two important things. The first is, how do we close the skills gap? And the second was, if we cast our eyes to the future, how do we acquire the skills that will prepare us for the future? A lot of richness from the panel and from your interventions, but I've summarized 6 points. First, point 1 is that entrepreneurship is alive in Africa and thriving. Secondly, we do have a significant skills gap, not just technical skills, but also business-oriented skills. There's a need for the formal curriculum in schools and universities to prepare both soft and hard skills that are relevant, but also for there to be specific institutions, organizations who provide business and management skills. Third point, the gap is closing, partly because of the great work that a lot of the panelists are doing, but not fast enough. Fourth, the ecosystem is fundamental, but significant challenges remain. Sustainability remains a challenge, and the governments play an important role. Fifth, partnerships are pivotal. But I think there's a need for us to map out the opportunities so that entrepreneurs in Africa would know where to go and who is offering what. And then secondly, we need to grow the networks so that the networks could support each other and support the entrepreneurs. And my last point is that I just feel that we need to do a lot more research, economic research, that has practical application for governments as they think about the policy framework that is business friendly and helps enhance entrepreneurship. That is also relevant for businesses as they think through how to be more relevant in this space, and for Africa's young budding entrepreneurs and existing entrepreneurs so that they have the sort of enabling environment that is conducive to progress and sustainability. Those are the 6 main points that I've been able to surmise, but I'd like you to join me in thanking a most excellent panel. And I think we will have an announcement about the coffee break and the timing.
Thank you, Raymond, and a wonderful panel. May I invite you to step forward and ask the photographers to take a picture of the panel. A round of applause as they do that. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Let me start with a couple of housekeeping announcements, which are very important. The first one is that please do visit the information desk. We want to know your departure times, and it's very important for the hotel. So please reconfirm your departure times at the information desk with the hotel, and you can find them in the main hall, at the main reception. The second is we do have a few missing translation devices. So they only work with the system here, so even if you take it away, it's not going to be so useful to you. So please bring back translation devices. You might have accidentally carried them with you. If you have done that, feel free and be very comfortable to return them, please. Thank you. At this point, let me just take you through what remains of the program. Because now we are going to move, I guess, into smaller groups based on your interest, which gives you a little bit more opportunity to actually interact and to share your ideas. We want to take advantage of your expertise as participants. So we're going to go into concurrent sessions or breakaway groups. The first one is going to be on youth, jobs, skills, and entrepreneurship. Research paper presentations will be made as well. It will be led by UNDP in breakout room 1. Now, breakout room 1, it's on the left-hand side of the main lobby as you go towards the reception area. There are clear signs that will lead you to these breakout rooms, and feel free to ask my colleagues as well. But you will find signs that will lead you to breakout room 1, where UNDP will be discussing on the same topic, and as well as sharing research paper presentations on skills mismatch and jobs for African youth. The second one, in breakout session 2, again in the same area, will be on youth employment. And what have we learned and what are the opportunities? So if you choose to go to that one, please do. The third one, breakout room 3, again clearly labeled, This one is on the right-hand side, just as you go out. It's upstairs. So there are steps that will lead you up there. Please follow the signs. It's on experiences in upgrading youth skill sets and entrepreneurship capacities. So see you there. The fourth one, on, again, breakout room number 4, will be on youth strategies to employment issues. Where are we now? Sharing lessons and the good practices as well. So there are 4 breakout groups, breakout group number 1, 2, 3, and 4, clearly labeled. And please choose. You have the program with you, and make your way there and make your contribution to these breakout sessions. This gives you an opportunity to really participate. We apologize, some of our plenary discussions do not provide as much time, but they are also geared to trigger these discussions in breakout sessions. At lunchtime, we have a special session for young people to actually contribute to policies. So lunch will be served outside, and you can bring your lunch inside, and there will be a discussion on youth employment policies. This is particularly important because you have to come up with 4 or so recommendations of what you want to see in terms of policy, and these recommendations will be presented to the ministers. So there will be a ministerial dialogue right at the end of the day, the last session on your program, where we will sit through a number of ministers on the podium to discuss and to listen to the recommendations from young people and to share their own views on how this practically is going to be implemented. So these are 2 related sessions. So make sure, young people, that you maximize this opportunity and you really say what you want to see. And then also join the discussion with the ministers right at the end. We will have ministers from Nigeria, Egypt, South Sudan, Liberia, and Eswatini that will be sitting on the podium for that. So please take full advantage of it. It's actually a highlight of this conference. After that, if we go by your program, you will see at 14:30 to 16, we also have concurrent sessions. Again, breakout room 1, 2, 3. So same rooms. You have 2 opportunities to actively participate in the conference. So call this today a day of participation. So enjoy your tea break. Please make your way to these concurrent rooms by 11 o'clock. So I hope you will be able to catch a cup of coffee. See you then. Thank you very much. I'm reminded it's already 11, so you'll be able to have a cup of coffee and head straight to the concurrent sessions. Thank you very much.